Hello all. Today we're going to look at the cultural value dimensions covered in chapter 3, and I'm going to focus on 4 different aspects of the cultural value dimensions. Geert Hofstede have pioneered this work, and he actually looks at a few more things, but we'll focus on 4: individualism, collectivism, masculinity and femininity, power distance, and uncertainty avoidance. Now I want you to look at all of these on a scale, so we can't just say this is how Americans are, and this is how Sweden is, or this is how Japan or India, whatever. There are lots of variations and intricacies and ambiguities in culture, and those things must be thought about and understood and celebrated rather than just put in a nice little box. So with that, let's look at individualism and collectivism, for example. So individualism and collectivism, they have to do with how we make decisions. Whether it's me, I make decisions for myself. How does that impact not just my immediate family, not just my nuclear family, but the family or the group that I'm part of? So a lot of people from individualistic cultures, they say, well, my family is really important to me. Yes, of course family is important to you, but the decision that I make on where to go to college doesn't affect my aunt's kids, my cousins or my second cousins. But in collectivist cultures, that does have an impact on the larger family group, social group. And so it's important to think about that. And nuclear families in individualistic cultures, extended families and tribes in collectivist cultures is another point of variation. And individualism and collectivism is probably one of the most distinct ways that we can tell how culturally different we are. And even within individualistic cultures, there's lots of variations. So if you look at the chart further on in the PowerPoint, you'll see I've compared 3 different cultures: United States, India, and Sweden. And India and Sweden have a lot of differences. And Sweden and America, you would think, would have lots of similarities, and they do, but there are some distinct differences as well. So for example, even though both Sweden and the United States would be in an individualistic culture, you'll find that competition, the way America and Sweden looks at competition, is very different. So for example, in the US, competition is encouraged. You are distinct, you're an individual, you have to win. There's a lot of focus on that. Whereas in Sweden, the culture itself doesn't allow for people to stick out. It's actually part of their cultural rules to not stick out too much. And so you'll find that there are a lot of variations. And some large collectivist groups will be found in Africa, Asia. Japan is very, very collectivist, and so is China. And a lot of Asian cultures, generally cultures, Europe and Western part of the globe falls generally into a little bit more of the individualistic part of it. So again, in general terms. And I'm going to do some of the other ones as well. The next one that I want to quickly focus on is feminine and masculine cultures. And this doesn't have to do with how people dress or how people look, but it's how we look at gender roles. So for example, in feminine cultures, the gender roles are really, really mixed. So both men and both women do almost the exact same things. They're expected to take initiative, both of them. And the gender roles are much more overlapped. And versus in places like India, you'll see in masculinity, you'll find that India and in the United States actually rate pretty high when it comes to masculinity and femininity. And that means that some of the gender roles are still pretty entrenched. So men do certain things, women do certain things. Not just the difference in how men and women do, but the things that men do or masculine things are considered to have much more importance. So So, for example, you're supposed to achievement is really celebrated. So, and even Germany would fall under this really high masculine culture. So even though it's in Europe, and but it's not a Scandinavian culture, so you'll find that even Germany has a very high masculine rating in the Hofstede cultural value dimensions. So those are the two. I'm going to do another video with the uncertainty avoidance and power distance. So stay tuned.